Welcome back. You're watching Political Exchange, where we continue our discussion with South Africa's Trade Minister Rob Davies. Minister, we focused a lot on our imperatives on the continent and, of course, with the global south. But we do have existing trade relations with developed countries. Let's start with South Africa-US trade relations. You are on record as saying that we need an extension. We would like the AGOA arrangement to continue. And I've seen reports that our ambassador, Ibrahim Rasool, has already started what is called a war chest to kind of lobby for that process. Just tell us, how important is US-SA trade relations, and what is the specific efforts that you're putting in place to ensure that we, scale up that relationship?
Well, yes, indeed. Let me just say that when we talk about diversifying our trade relations, we are saying so against the background of a recognition of the changing nature of the world economy. It's not a desire on our part to lessen or reduce our trade and investment relations with the established partners in the developed world. So in the United States, we have had in existence for a number of years the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, which we think has basically been a very useful framework for developing trade and investment cooperation between a number of AGOA beneficiary countries in Africa, of which we are one, and the United States. And the discussion is taking place against the background of the AGOA as it stands now will expire in 2015, and the question is what's going to replace it. Now, we have argued for continuity. We've argued that this is an arrangement that, apart from the benefits it yields to African countries, in terms of the preferences which African countries get in terms of access to the US market, it also builds goodwill for the United States in an increasingly competitive environment for building of relations on the African continent. And so we've argued strongly that this relationship ought to continue in more or less its current form. We can, of course, identify a number of improvements we'd like to see, but our first prize is to see a continuation of this arrangement. Now, I think we've got a very good hearing and understanding from the administration, and this was underscored when the Secretary of State Hillary Clinton visited South Africa a little while ago. But the US system is one where an arrangement like this is very much in the court of the legislature. So it's Congress and the Senate that will be taking decisions on AGOA. So when someone like myself visits the United States, as I did a little while ago, we obviously have to take the time out to go and visit opinion makers in Congress, officials who are linked to Congress people, as well as all kinds of think tanks, and basically make our case. And that's also what Ambassador Rasool is doing. And we've also been encouraging South African business, along with business from other countries in Africa and the rest of the African continent, and all the African beneficiaries of AGOA are united in wanting to see a rollover of this arrangement. So that's what we're doing, and that's what we're trying to achieve.
Minister, the relationship between South Africa and the EU remains a strategic one of great importance despite the crisis there at the moment. Just in your estimation, how have we been affected by the meltdown in the Eurozone, and what have we put in place to shield ourselves, so to speak, and is that even possible?
Well, Europe, of course, the European Union is our largest trading partner as a bloc. If we take individual countries, European countries are not at the top any longer. China is. But as a bloc, the European Union is our largest trading partner. Now, unfortunately, what has happened is that as a result of the crisis, our total trade with Europe has not yet recovered to the levels it reached in 2008. If we break this down, we'll find that in the case of Germany, it's nearly back. It's only 5% off last year, and probably this year it'll be back to where it was in 2008. But other countries, many of them are still behind the level that was achieved in 2008. So that's the reality. And then if we look again at the fact that our trade basket with the European Union has a insufficient but still relatively higher proportion of value-added products, that tells us that it's a very serious matter for us. It has been something which has been a brake on the possibility of South African enterprises growing and creating jobs. So that's the reality now. We don't necessarily just accept that it should stay that way. We continue to work on trade promotion. For example, I've just come back from the United Kingdom, and we talked about the target we'd set in 2009 to try to double our trade by 2015. On current projections, we won't hit that target until 2017. But my counterpart, the Secretary of State for Business Innovation, Vince Cable, will be bringing a business delegation from Britain to South Africa next month, and we hope that will give more impetus to strengthening our trade relations with the UK. That's just one example. So we continue to try to do what we can to promote and strengthen that, but I think we have to realize that the European Union is enmeshed in a very serious economic stagnation at the moment, and that's a reality we're just going to have to take into account whether we like it or not.
Now, Minister, of course, this reality that you're talking about has forced everybody to rethink trade policy, economic policy, and certainly between yourself and the Minister for Economic Development in South Africa, Minister Ibrahim Patel, you've been at pains to stress the importance of industrialization as a tool, a more rational approach to planning economies. But you have been accused in some instances by your detractors that it's just another form of protectionism, it's more red tape. Putting all your eggs into the basket of the state is not going to engender competitiveness. How sure are you that the shift that you've engineered is actually going to deliver the goods?
Well, I think that the quest for industrial development, which is not unique to South Africa, it's common across the African continent now, is merely to learn the lessons of economic history, that there's been no case of any country that has moved from being an underdeveloped economy to a developed economy without adding more value in the production processes to the products you produce. So industrialization is very, very important. There was a notion around a few years ago that the world, because of globalization, had now moved into an era where countries could conceive of post-industrial service sector-led growth and development. But I think that countries which embraced that and decided to prioritize financial speculation over industrial development are now regretting that choice and are all seeking to reindustrialize. So I think industrialization is the name of the game around the world. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means that we have to realize that the state has to play a role in supporting, nurturing industrial sectors. That doesn't mean that we're going in for a headlong, unthought through lurch into protectionism, not at all. Our tariff policy is in fact one based on evidence-based, and we continue to guard very jealously the processes and procedures where the International Trade Administration Commission has to do detailed analysis before recommending any tariff changes. And those tariff changes could be up or down, and we have lowered tariffs as much as we've raised tariffs. Broadly speaking, we've lowered tariffs on upstream industries which are supplying inputs into downstream industries, and we've raised tariffs where the evidence tells us that this will yield results on downstream industries that are more labor intensive. Those are not by any means the only or most important tools to support industrial development. We do emphasize very much the point about competitiveness and the importance of industries, manufacturing industries, investing and becoming more competitive. And when we see that some manufacturers may be wanting to sit this out and wait for better times before making investments, this year we came up with a Manufacturing Competitiveness Enhancement Program, which is an incentive designed to try to encourage manufacturers to invest and raise competitiveness, because I think we know that this is quite critical.
Minister, of course, the world of trade is governed by rules that are set in multilateral forums across the world. And we know that there's traditionally been a tension between the global south and north about how the rules advantage or disadvantage developing countries. South Africa has played quite a big role in lobbying for reform. In your estimation, are we making progress at that global level, or are we still stuck in the same paradigm despite the evidence showing that change is really necessary?
Well, I think we do remain at an impasse in the World Trade Organization Doha round negotiations. We do remain at an impasse. There have been a few ideas about low-hanging fruits and short-term measures that we can deliver on, but unfortunately none of those have made the requisite headway. We remain committed to the view that any program that is embarked on has got to basically deliver on the broad mandate that was agreed in Doha in 2001. And that is that there are imbalances and inequities in the global trading system that disadvantage developing countries. These are most stark and most evident in the case of agricultural trade, where high tariffs, high subsidies continue to benefit small numbers of farmers in less competitive conditions in the developed world to the disadvantage of many, many farmers in the developing world. But they're not the only issues. But in general terms, we think that it is necessary for the world trading system to be rebalanced. When that may happen, I think, is anybody's guess. But clearly, I think in our view, there's a need for new leadership at the top of the WTO. There will be a process of electing a new Director General, which will start this year, the end of this year. And we're looking, I think, to a new dynamism in that process.
Well, Minister, lots to talk about still, but that's where we will have to leave it. Tune in again tomorrow night for another edition of Political Exchange. I'm Karima Brown. Goodbye.